Hi everyone, my name is Rinson Joseph, and this is my CSE335 class project. It is called Skill Bridge, and a little slogan that I came up with it for is called Connecting Learners with Local Experts. That's kind of the base idea, the core idea, and inspiration behind the project itself. So we can get right into it. The high-level idea kind of behind Skill Bridge is to provide a mobile app where someone who wants to learn a skill, for example, can discover nearby experts, see them on a map, and then save the ones that they like or are interested in. Let's say they have a skill like Java coding, and they would like to learn that skill. They can save that expert who has that skill and is offering their services on the map. And so in this presentation, I'll kind of just walk through that original idea, some use cases from phase one, the MVVM architecture that I ended up with in phase three, and I'll show you what the current app can do and its capabilities as well as its limitations. And to wrap it all up, we'll just go over some lessons learned and suggestions for the class and for the project itself. Okay, going right into the project idea. The project idea for SkillBridge itself kind of started with a very simple question that I asked myself, and it was, how do I find somebody near me who can actually teach me something in person? If I wanted to learn something quick, like skateboarding, soccer, if I need to get a coach for soccer, these skills can only be obtained if you join an academy or join some sort of service. But instead of that, if you want some sort of one-on-one skill coaching, if you could find a way to get that sort of one-on-one experience, I felt like that was something that people would find useful. Certain people might like to work one-on-one with certain individuals instead of working with a group. Some people prefer that. So I thought this would be a good idea to kind of build off of. The first goal that I had is to help these learners find nearby experts for one-on-one coaching. So, for example, a learner can specify what skills they're interested in and how far they're willing to travel, and then these experts can basically show or display what they're good at on the map. As you can see, this is the map implementation on the application itself. As you can see on the bottom row, we have the map icon, and it shows and displays the map where the current user that is logged into their profile is located at. So, secondly, I wanted to use both skills and distance to match learners and these experts. So there's a very, very lightweight kind of matching algorithm that kind of looks at overlapping skill keywords and approximate distance in miles, and it kind of uses those two factors to come up with a match score. And it basically shows suggestions for experts to learners who are interested in learning a skill. And finally, this needed to feel like an actual mobile experience. So I added a tab bar with the map tab, an experts tab, a save experts tab, and a profile tab, and some simple authentication screens for registering and logging in on the very, very first screen that the user enters into when they open the application itself. Perfect. And moving on next to the use case diagram. This slide kind of just shows the original use case diagram from phase one that it came up with. There are three main actors here, the guest user, skill learner, and a skill expert. For the skill learners, the key use cases are things like searching for experts, viewing experts on the map, saving an expert that they're really interested in, requesting a connection with an expert. Those connect to smaller use cases like getting the user's location, geocoding expert addresses into coordinates and handling cases, for example, where no matches were found or there's no availability for that particular expert. On the other hand, for skill experts, the main use case for them is the skill offer. And essentially, what this does is they can define what they're willing to teach and update their profile in the process. So, those are the two kind of main actions for skill experts who are willing to offer their services on the application. The diagram also includes kind of flows for forgotten passwords and notifications. Of course, those will be discussed in the limitations and capabilities of the application in terms of what the implementation can actually do currently. So when an expert accepts or declines a connection, that, for example, is not currently implemented, and that is a future implementation that could take place. But yeah, in phase three, some of the main um, goals were accomplished, but there are some remaining stretch goals that were not able to be implemented in this particular uh, time interval. So moving on to slide four, going over the MVVM architecture, I'll kind of walk through how the current implementation kind of fits into here. On the view side, I have three columns. On the view side, I have all these Swift UI screens. So, for example, the content view, gate view at the top, the welcome screen, register screen, login screen for local accounts, and finally, all the tab views, the map screen, mentor list screen, save screen, and profile screen, which you saw on the previous page, or in the previous slide. Now, in the view model column, the main object is the app state, which is an observable object created as a state object at the application level. And we're basically just throwing that into the environment. The app state publishes the current user profile. It can list learners. It can list experts. It can expose the match score that it came up with through a function called match score in the code base that the UI kind of basically uses to sort these experts by relevance, of course, according to the distance as well as the score that it comes up with. I also have the location manager, which is another uh, observable object here that wraps kind of the CL location manager, and it publishes the user's authorization state and last location to the map screen when applicable. In the final column on the right, we have the model and services column. And for this one, I have a pure Swift struct called user profile, which represents the learner or expert with the ID, name, role, skills, distance in miles, and an address string. There's also a match struct, user entity and favorite entity. Those two entities are basically the ones that persist or when the user logs into the profile or into the application. And then finally, I have these two small service classes, the geocoding client and the map API service in the UI state that is in the middle column, added for kind of a helper sort of implementation. For the next slide, moving on we have the capabilities and limitations of the application itself. So kind of go over that real quick. On the capability side, we can see that users can register or log into local accounts currently, and the information is stored in Swift data. So it's not in a cloud or anything, it's stored locally. They can edit their profiles, the name, role, skills, or the city that they currently are locally residing in. Learners can see a list of nearby experts sorted by the match score, as I talked about earlier. They can also filter that list by skill text. So if they wanted to look for a specific skill, they can put that into the search bar. And as you can see on the left-hand side, that search bar, they can put it in and it will filter out to that particular skill. On the map tab, the app geocodes each expert's address and then it displays them as pins on the map. The learners themselves can save experts to a favorites list as well. As I said before, if you're interested in a particular skill, they can save that expert to that list. And finally, moving on to the current limitations of the application itself. As I said before, the request a connection button is not currently functional. It is just a dummy button. The full accept decline workflow has not been implemented yet. There's no real-time messaging between experts and these learners. I think that would be a great implementation to do in the future. Adding that communication aspect is definitely important nowadays. So having that would be useful. All the data, of course, I said before, is stored locally. So if the user installs the app on another phone, obviously they wouldn't be able to have this data. So it's a complete local app using Swift data. And of course, the location itself is approximate and uses a simple distance field, and it does not use live routing as of yet. Moving on to the lessons learned for this experience of creating this project and kind of going through the motions. The biggest one for me was really understanding how MVVM works with Swift UI. Instead of just, throwing all the logic into my views and just writing code, slinging code, being able to organize them into these shared states with the app state, with the environment object, kind of made it easier for me to see and to reuse data across the different screens, especially for, in this case, the map screen, list of experts, the save tab, and the profile screen. It was important to kind of internalize how MVVM works. So that's one of the major lessons I learned. I also learned how to use Swift data and MVVM hand in hand, defining those entities and how they're kind of used and this data is persisted on the application. MapKit and core location, of course, was an amazing topic that we went over this semester and learning to implement these things that we use every day, the map app on our phone itself, kind of being able to be displayed on the application that we work on was super cool. And finally, integrating simple web APIs like the one we discussed in class to just expose some results in the UI. to test kind of what we learned during the semester was also very, very useful. And I loved uh, enriching myself with that knowledge. Finally, for slide 7, the last and final slide, suggestions for improvements in both for the project and for the class itself. For future improvements on the app, I would love to, of course, establish that connection system when the learner taps the request a connection button. Being able to create that request and the expert being able to accept or decline is something I want to be able to add. I think it would be natural to add in also that communication thread, as I was talking about earlier. I think it would be super useful there to establish that communication between two individuals. Nowadays, that is very important. Um, and in terms of the class, a couple of things that maybe might have helped me a little bit. First would be a more detailed, maybe a lab that kind of went through simple Swift UI app with MVVM, maybe including moving logic between separate views. Um, but yeah, that's just one thing. Another thing would be probably understanding more the styling elements using Swift. I think that would have been nice to kind of fancy up the application itself and make it look neater. Of course, understanding the limitations involving Swift data would have been nice as well. As just a simple, small little things that could have been added on. And then, of course, one final thing was maybe leveraging a full-scale application in class to understand the class project itself, right? Because we're aiming to create like a working application, a full working application that could be possibly published to the App Store. So, leveraging examples of that in class might have also helped. And other than that, that should be all. So, thank you so much for listening.